Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Kicks and Slides, where we bring the beautiful game to life. It is I, your captain, Moj. So before we go deeper into the game that we have just witnessed between Spurs versus PSG, in which, of course, Spurs lose on penalties to PSG, please do not forget to like and subscribe and also engage in the comment section. Thank you. So with the game, right, I want to give props to Spurs. I think they played extremely well. I liked how, obviously, when the game began, they kept PSG out of their half. PSG had this mentality that, we are going to push Spurs into their own half. We want them to sit deep. We don't want them to challenge us. And in that way, if they do that, then they'll be playing right into our hands. And that's how we're going to find ways to score. In fact, what PSG wanted was they wanted Spurs to be so afraid of them that they don't want to match them, but not with Thomas Frank. Thomas Frank thought, we are going to play with these guys. We might not be able to hold possession like they do, but with the little position that we will have, we are going to fight toe to toe with them. And that's what we saw. And again, I have to give a special shout out to Kudos. I liked how Kudos played. He was not afraid of those players. He would hold the ball. He was very confident. In fact, he would hold the ball and he would try to drive past players with it, even though obviously once in a while he failed to do that. But I like that, because that, when he does that, obviously, and one player fails to take the ball off of him, there's always going to be another one that tries, obviously, to help the team player to get the ball off Kudos. And that way, obviously, there are players that are open and it gives you many options, and that's what happened. I also liked how Thomas Frank obviously played with Spurs. I liked his 5-3-2 formation whenever they didn't have the ball. And I also liked how his fullbacks would then switch to wingers whenever they had the ball. That would mean that obviously now in the midfield, they become five. And that way they get to hold off Hakimi and Nuno Mendes from overlapping and also taking advantage of the flex. Which obviously when I saw that, I was like, this is actually good. And to think that I didn't rate Spurs like that, I think I remember a few videos back, I was talking about how Spurs would also continue being 16th again. I did not see them in the top 6. I still don't, of course, because sometimes a team loses today, then the following game they do better, and you think, maybe they're back. It's not really the case with Spurs now, is it? Hopefully it is the case. They'll do better, but from what we know, I don't think they would. So anyway, going into the game, they managed to fend off PSG from getting into their half and also taking advantage of that. So what they did is they played toe to toe with them. They challenged them, and that obviously frustrated PSG, and they started obviously creating fouls, which obviously gave an advantage to Spurs, and that's how they got their goal through a set piece which we see Romero heading it or kicking it. He kicks it, obviously, then the keeper tries to keep it from hitting the net, but it hits the woodwork. Then when it hits the woodwork, it finds its way to Van de Ven. And Van de Ven obviously, passes it into the net. And just like that, Spurs are obviously 1-0 up. And I'm thinking, at this point in time, what Spurs are doing is very good. And this obviously is going to, cause some sort of panic. It's going to cause panic in these PSG players. And I think what should happen now is that Spurs should make sure that they hold it off from PSG. They hold off PSG from actually getting in a goal, because if they do that, then it changes the whole dynamics of things. But obviously Spurs managed to do that, and they go to halftime leading. And I'm thinking, obviously, since Spurs are leading, definitely maybe Thomas Frank would try to be as defensive as possible and try to hold it off, and win the game 1-0. And I'm thinking with Luis Enrique is going to try now to go guns blazing. He's going to fight. But what we see when the second half resumes is that Spurs are still the only team that are going at it. They're still the only team that are going at it. And obviously PSG are trying to fight it off. They're trying to, create spaces, but they just keep on failing. Another thing which I realized that actually might be a problem for Spurs if they are to fight against teams like the PSGs, the Liverpools, and all these teams that they're going to compete with for these big accolades, is they don't have the right type of players. When now those players dipped, and Thomas Frank had to take them out, he wasn't really replacing them with players that are as good as them. You know what I mean? He wasn't replacing them with the players that were as good as them. But with PSG, it's different. He took out the Doués, he took out the Bacolas, bringing in the the Mbayes, and when they brought those players, they still gave you the same thing that Bakola gives you. They still gave you the same thing that Due gives you. You know what I mean? And that's the difference between these two sides. Yes, Spurs could have actually held on and maybe went on to win the game, but with the players that they had, when fatigue set in and their pace dipped, they couldn't hold the ball. They couldn't hold off PSG players from getting the ball off of them. So with that said, they ended up now just giving the ball to PSG, and they decided to defend the same thing that PSG tried to get them to do when the game began, and they refused it. But at the end of the day, now when they were all fatigued and everything, they capitulated into PSG's game plan. And obviously PSG gets a goal through Lee. They get the goal through Lee, a very good goal, I must add. It was far off, but he sees an opening and he just kicks it there and it goes in. And this goal now gives PSG the belief that now we have a chance. And because there's still like 15 minutes more to go. And of course Spurs tries, they try to hold it off, Now obviously Henrique now brings in Ramos, so that would mean that now Dembele moves into the winger, and now Ramos now plays as a striker, because initially we know that Dembele played as a striker and Doe and Bakola were on the sides. So now when Ramos comes, a natural prolific striker, I might add, even though he doesn't get to play as much at PSG, but he still won. We saw what he did at Benfica. So now he plays as a center forward and Dembele moves on the side. Of course, he gives them problems now. He starts giving them problems. He sees an opening, he gives it, and Ramos just heads it home. And just like that, it's 2-2, and it's just 3 minutes away. And I'm thinking, oh, Spurs, you just had 3 more minutes, And now at this point, of course, PSG are smelling blood. They look at the clock, they see that there's still 3 more minutes and they think they can do it, but unfortunately they couldn't. And now it went on penalties, and on penalties, of course, it starts off with Vitinha missing. And now I'm thinking maybe today's Spurs day, maybe this is their chance to actually fix the errors that they made in the last 15 minutes of the game. Unfortunately, it doesn't go to plan, and PSG finds their way, and they managed to score 3 goals more. They managed to score 3 goals, one more than what Spurs manages to, and just like that, Spurs wins it with Nuno Mendes taking the last kick. And well, honestly speaking, I'm proud of Spurs. I think they played really well. I think they wanted it and they showed it. They were cohesive. They every one of those players played their positions like their lives depended on it. And I understand how shattered they were. They should be, in fact. They should be as shattered as they are. They should be as devastated as they are, because they really put in the blood, sweat, and tears. And unfortunately, it didn't pay off. And obviously, Daniel Levy, I'm sure he must have watched that game. And I think he's definitely going to try to bring in a few players, maybe 1 or 2, because I think Spurs definitely need more signings if they are to compete. They'll be in the Champions League, they'll be in the League too, and they're going to be going toe to toe with teams that have strengthened. And for them to also challenge those teams, for them to be present in the top 6 and also perform better in the Champions League, because I don't think they want to they want to come out from the groups. I don't think they want to be the team that does not make it out of the group stages. I think they also want to make it out of the last 16 and so forth and so forth. Although now the format has changed, it's no longer like that. But I don't think they want to be down the pecking order of the teams that are to be relegated out of the Champions League. I think he wants to do better, and if he wants to do that, he needs to bring in the right type of players, the players that are needed, the players that are going to take the football club forward. So thank you guys for watching until thus far. Please do not forget to like and subscribe, and also share in your thoughts about what you thought about the game and what you think now about Spurs. Do you think they'll do better? Do you think they'll do better? Because today's game, surely it shows a different perspective of them. Obviously against Bayern they lost 4-0, and I personally started writing them off. I didn't think they had it in them. I didn't think the players were ready. But from what I saw today against PSG, I think they played really well. And if Thomas Frank is set to continue with this formation going forward, and if the behavior that we saw from his players today continues even into the Premier League and the Champions League, there's just a lot to expect from this Spurs side. And you know what, I think they need to be proud of themselves. They need to be really proud of themselves, because a lot of people, myself included, didn't think they would give this fight that they gave. A lot of people were thinking PSG were going to win 5-0, and Spurs fought. You know, they fought and they lost on penalties. I don't think that's bad. So thank you for watching until thus far. See you soon.